Welcome,
Two.
authors
Anonymous.
podcast with Carolyn Rosa Patas.
And a Mirabal.
Today's conversation is world building, specifically two subjects within it are social norms and environment.
Yeah, I think that's when you're talking about world building, that's what it breaks down to. Those are the two only things, how we interact with our world and how the world sustains our interactions. And we'll break that down. But also, we are going to be posting this a day late. Usually we publish on Tuesdays every week. But 4th of July, I don't know what else to tell you. So
we're both still young. What do you want? I'm sorry. We're a day late. So it's coming
out Wednesday. That's July 7th. So one day. That's not bad. It could be worse.
Could be worse. But we're coming hot with today's episode. World building. Carolyn, go ahead. Lead in.
You said social. So immediately, I think of social norms. And when you're discussing world building, not just, and we'll get to environment with how your world looks and all the details that come with that, but social norms meaning how does your character interact with what's happening? How do other characters interact with what's happening? So I think of things like law and order. If somebody breaks a law, what are the consequences? And if somebody breaks that law, that should be important to your plot. Just how things are important in terms of law and order and behavior and sociology in that. If you want to expand and give an example, that's kind of like the overarching definition, but.
No, I agree. I was just thinking about it, without even having to go into other movies or book examples. You can just imagine the world building within our own world. If you didn't live in today's universe, in today's world, imagine how we interact with one another about iPhones or about ads. We all ambiguously know how much we hate ads. That's world building. The way that you interact with the things within your world. Simple as that. Social norms.
Yeah, really to keep it simple. I mean, and to bring an example too, the entire plot in 1984 with Big Brother, that was completely a thing on world building or on Law and Order. You couldn't talk a certain way, or Big Brother was always watching, and if you did one thing wrong, you died. So that's just how Law and Order can affect your world building. Is it illegal to kill someone, or is it not? And if it's not illegal to kill someone, how that's typically our social norm. I mean, in most places, I don't know, but if it's not, that's going to be essential to your plot and how people then behave. Are they killing people, and for what other justified reason other than, well, it's not against the law, but maybe people don't kill for XYZ. So that's just how you make people react with the situations that they have to comply with the higher order, higher purpose, what have you. And that's social norms across the board. And that can go into food and diet, which was another topic that we had planned. The vegetation. Are people hunting? Are you meat eating? Or is it mostly vegetarian?
Yeah, and especially we're both sci-fi authors, sci-fi minded people, so you can start a whole bunch of different tangents can go off of that alone. You can, maybe they're 3D printing their food, and maybe they religiously think of food in a different way now. They view life and they view animals in a higher purpose than we normally do, almost harkening back to the whole Native American, one with nature type of thing. So you can even build all that together with how nature and technology are kind of ending up blending together, and again, all world building.
Yeah. So the food and diet, and because of their diet, how are people then built? Because then that comes into character description by default. If you were someone who had a high meat, high protein diet, you'd think they'd be cut, and maybe they're doing more hunting and they're doing more Olympic type of shit for survival. But if someone's more vegetarian, naturally, I think if someone, and this is stereotypizing, whatever the word is, being stereotypical. Someone that's more a vegetarian, I naturally think of them as more calm, more living in a field of grass with sunshine. So taking those things into consideration, the personalities that come with the food that you're using as energy, how are people reacting on that energy?
Yeah, I actually like that a lot. It reminds when I went to Mexico and we visited a Cuancuan, which is basically a hole in the floor, and it just a huge watering hole basically. And supposedly that water is rich in calcium. So the reason when the Spaniards came over, they had like such a hard time moving into like the territory, even though they were like vastly technology superior, is because the Native Americans at the time living in that area, well, the natives, not the Native Americans at the time, they were
Right.
going around and they were drinking this calcium-rich water, and they were making their bones like supercharged, hard to break, like impossible. So like that's why these people were just like insanely strong and just had like they could at least, I mean, they got mowed down anyway. We all know history, but they at least kept up a fight for a little bit longer
The
than
momentum.
expected. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, that's just a really good example. Like, and that's world building detail down to a T. I mean, and you can get very big in your world building, but to keep it simplistic, as long as your characters and your world building are both fleshed out, you won't have either of them fall flat. But it doesn't have to be too extreme. One of those other things too, like how people interact with one another, whether it's language or slang or greetings, how are your people talking? How are your characters talking to other characters in your book? Again, back to 1984, they had that language,
Double speak.
Yes. Yeah, and that totally built the culture, the social norms. Like, you knew if somebody didn't talk double speak because you reported it. Like, so language is super, super important. Not like just not because of only where your story takes place, like where the people are from, but it builds that legitimacy in your world. Yeah, it's like that actuality in your world from language.
And I'm going to be a little basic for bringing an example from my own book, but again, the reason I really like language and how you can use your own made up languages and like little slangs for world building and how they become evident. One word that was a derogatory term, oh my God, an allegory of the end was strainer. So it was a person like, when you strain your neck and you look up, to them it was derogatory. It was like what you called somebody that was stupid, basically, because why would you spend your time looking at the stars and like, looking up to something, the possibility of what there is, when you can look down to the ground and look what there is, like what to work on, what to do. And that just in itself, I mean, like, listen to what that is. Like, it's a society of non-daydreamers, of people that just like, all right, this is what's in front of me. I have to work on this. This is what I have to do. Just little things like that say so much about the society that you build. And again, it's all just world building. It's actually kind of funny where world building in essence is really just how the world affects the character. So it's almost like character building within the world.
Oh, it definitely is. Character development. I mean, that is a whole nother podcast, but I mean, maybe it would have been smarter, I don't know, to do character development before the world building, but they definitely coincide. Like, they go hand in hand. But going off that too, like, I was thinking of Harry Potter, and I've never read the Harry Potter series, so attack me if you will. I want to hear it in the comments. Tell me
Neither
how
have
I
shit it on us.
Yeah. But I know Slytherin when I see it, because that's the language in Harry Potter that made it so notorious. Like, that's language and world building. You have people that are team this. I just know Slytherin. Maybe I'm team Slytherin, I guess, because that's the only one I'm familiar with.
You guess, huh?
I guess I'd have to read the series. That's like what language is. And yeah, going off too, like for my own book, their national greeting is change is internal. The other person replies change is eternal. And that's just our national greeting. So, I mean, whatever vibe that gives you, that's the intent of the author, because they're establishing their world and you need to be submerged in their social norms and how people are interacting. You're entering a new world. So the author's laying out these guidelines to be like, this is what it's supposed to feel like. You don't do world building accidentally or what seems it's supposed to, I think, have meaning, which is what we talked about with food and how your people are going to react on that, and language and how you talk and interact. Yeah.
And a big one too is like, religion, right?
Oh yeah, you're right.
Like how religion not only is a staple within society, how people interact with it, how it affects the character, but there's also, and it's a big one that I feel like people always kind of glaze over, but it's also the making fun of that religion. Like in a logical world building, you don't just have a crazy religion that everybody follows. You also have the people that are like, oh, can you believe those people believe in monsters and the in the fields, whatever it is, or like, oh, can you believe those guys believe that there's a god floating around just like zapping lightning down, and that's what thunder is. Like it's just there's always like a person that's gonna be the skeptic, and you always have to put that character in, because not only is it realistic, character's also pretty funny, honestly. Let's be honest.
And it plays devil's advocate and adds again that like the deepness to your world building, because you can have everybody complacent, and unless that's the trope of your story, you need to have that devil's advocate to flesh out why your people believe in what they do. Real quick too, going off that, one way to show the difference in people and where they believe is clothing, and what people wear can play into religion. Popes, you think of a pope, immediately like the fucking white cloth suit, maybe a hat, like just you get the idea of what popes wear. So if somebody is like doesn't believe in God, what are they wearing? What do you immediately think of? And that's kind of how your people should then behave with their beliefs and how they interact with this world that they're living in. But yeah, religion can go super, super deep. Definitely.
No, and the big thing too is that religion is like such a big overarching topic in itself that kind of breaks up into other things, like how much religion kind of goes in and explains also environment. Because as you said with the clothing and whatnot, which is a great example. I mean, just think about it. Most people, even this is like a little necklace that I got from DR, and it's like a representation of like the Antigual religion of the people there, the whole like tribe stuff that they were believing in, the Tainos. That's what that is. There are people that wear the cross, obviously. And if you think about it, the cross is hilarious. It's literally a death sentence. Think about it. It's a death sentence. They literally put a person on a crucifixion, like dying on your neck.
That's a quote.
That's hilarious. Like, and everyone has their own like different little things about it. And again, what I just said is basically your skeptic character. You make a religion that's so heavily like followed and so heavily like revered, and you just have one character that just says that one off-colored comment. And it almost brings emphasis to the actual belief, because now that means that not everyone believes it. So the people that do believe it have faith.
So yeah, and in addition to what you're saying just about an environment, like, and with wearing clothes and wearing certain things, that can definitely also establish the wealth in the country, or where, not even country, but wherever your world is. Like, I'm just keeping it in narrow for this place that you're having your world building, but in this country, like depending what you wear, and then how people work, and what they're wearing, like what they can afford, definitely is an environmental world building. Because how rich is the place people are living in? Is everybody having flying cars and everybody's a rich bitch? Or are people like dying and starving and scavenging for things in their environment to survive? Yeah, so I think in addition to clothes, that can be social, but it can bleed into environmental. Why are people wearing the things they're wearing? Same thing with climate. It's another one. If it's cold, if it's hot, what are people wearing? But that's environmental climate. If you want to talk about how world building and the vegetation and the climate, how that's going to look. Give it up to you.
The thing that I like about the whole religion and environment thing is, again, because they play so heavily together. If you have a people that live in the mountains, maybe their religion is based upon the mountains. There was an example, an author that I talked to in my podcast, and he was talking about how a mountain range near a certain sect of people that he wrote, it looks like a face of a person. So people just develop a religion around that face of the person. So right there, you have a rift between the people that are saying, oh, well, that's obviously natural. I mean, like, look at that. Nature made a face of a man. That's obviously something to be, worshipped and to develop a religion about it. And there's other people that goes like, I don't even really see a face if you think about it. I mean, if you look at it from this angle, it looks kind of more like a monkey or something. I don't know. And they just develop a different viewpoint about it. And think about it, all those different little sects of religion are just from a different vantage point of your environment. So you have people that live in front of the mountain that believe in it fully. You have people that live behind the mountain that have no faith, and then the people in the center are like scattered.
And part of that, for environmental too, world building, you could draw a map to help yourself literally see your world, not just how the people are interacting with it, but on a bigger scope, and see where the mountains are, where the church is, where the people who don't believe in that shit reside. Like, yeah. I mean, yeah, I suck at drawing maps. I tried for about 6 days straight, and I just can't, because I should. Like, I need to take my own advice here because it can seriously be helpful. Because then when you're writing your stories and they're like, they headed west. Did they head west, or is that actually north on your map? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense in correlation of where building A is to building B. So definitely for environmental world building, have a map. Know if you have different buildings and different societies, where are they living? And does their climate change? Is your world so big that there's different climate within where different societies live? That's all part of it. It's like these little minute things that do bring in together that big picture in one easy flow.
And kind of going off of that, because I think that's a great tip. Even if you have no intention of adding a map to your book, to your world, have one just for your own reference point. I can't tell you the amount of times that I got into a point and I was like, all right, they move. Oh, shit. Wait, where are they? Are they north? Are they west? Are they going east? Are they going west? Like, what is this in relative to the other place? And it gets even worse when you develop a bigger and bigger world and you have other things to go and reference off of. Like, all right, they need to go west, but what is that in reference to Cam's Diner that I put in the north?
Right.
And just and of course, and the worst part is when you're initially writing and you don't think about it, so you just go with whatever answer, and then as you start building up from that, it's like building a house on shitty foundation. You just keep on, the more you build on top, it's just going to get more and more congested.
And as you're describing this, as it gets more congested, it doesn't make sense of where things are located. Then you got to bring in another issue, which is important to environment, but how are people traveling? If you have something that's on the completely different side of your world and you need them to get there for the plot in your story, and they need to get there fast, is it by plane? Is it by astral projection? Is it through space travel? So you got to think of that not only in reference of where things are, but if it is far or doesn't make sense, like what is another way of how then they can get there? The main travel in part of my book, I have two things. The one is astral projection. The other one is because my people in my book, and I'll keep this simple, but because the people in my book are controlled by the government, I mean, they actually have these chemicals in their brain that makes them suppressive to the government. Their feet, like a computer, automatically will calculate where they need to go without their own intuition. So the people in my book travel almost like robots, or not automatically, or so automatically that it doesn't make sense.
Like a self-driving car, and then you can just like have your conscious like do whatever you want as you're doing it.
What'd you say about a car?
Like it's a self-driving car. Like you tell your body, yes, I want to go to Wawa, and then as you're doing that, you're thinking about whatever you want to be thinking about.
Right. Yeah. So that's how the main people travel in my book, with like just thinking about different things and they end up there. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, if it's takes place in space, you have flying shuttles. How does the shuttles technology correspond with their environment? Like, are they gas run? Is it on stardust? All those details that are like everything in your book. And so many authors go so above and beyond of how to make things detailed. And I feel like that's for the super fans, like that can go and research this. And not that they have to put everything in their book, but it's just enough that it makes sense to the reader to be like, you're just making shit up so the plot works.
Yeah.
The reader will pick up on that if it doesn't make coherent sense.
Yeah, like I actually really like what the whole thing we're talking about with not just a transportation, but what it's fueled by is a huge thing, because that all ties in together. Are they using standardized batteries? I know in a story that I haven't released yet called Banshee Cannot Die, the main energy source that they use there is actually a huge plot point into the world building itself, because they basically found a way to finally get wireless energy. So it's this like engine that is perpetual, and not only is it perpetual, but it can power other things. So then ships start becoming almost like batteries, where you go out there and then it just comes with all the peripherals like a switchblade, and everything just comes out of it, and it's all powered by the ship. And just the bigger the ship it gets, like the bigger the engine, the bigger like range it has, the more it can power. And all these things tie in together with the world building and what you're doing with your character development.
And I think what's important to note here is that even though we're writers and our brain goes to the creativity and the story and all of that, but when it comes to world building, you got to get technical. You need to pull in that, your right-sided brain, the brain that deals with the technicalities and the mathematical shit. Maybe it's the left, but
left or right? I actually don't know either.
I think it is. You know what? I think it's the left. because I have a tattoo behind my ear. And I was like, oh, it's like my own little planet on my like crazy, like creative brain, but it's on the wrong side of my head. So that's how I know it's supposed to be the left. Long story short, pull in that side of your brain and get detailed about your world. That's like the most we can really say here. I mean, socially, how your character is and how they interact with the world. But then on the flip side, how is your world interacting and supporting your character so that the two can exist in a way that makes sense and normal? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm asking our audience if they know it. Tell me in the comments if you understand what I'm talking about.
I thought it was a rhetorical question for me. It was like, yeah, no, I get it. I'm here with you, buddy.
That's all I got on those tips. Social, environment, and the key things that we talked about in there. Law and order, slang, language, clothing, but then religion, climate, and draw a map if it helps.
Yeah, same thing. And really, all I would say is emphasize on the map thing. Again, even if you're not going to use the motherfucker, do it for your own reference. I can't tell you the amount of times you're going to save yourself. I say that from personal experience. I'm sure Carolyn can go off on a couple tangents herself about it. I'm telling it's a huge help. And I think with that, we're at the end of the episode, right? All I got in me.
Yeah.
I think
if anybody has questions or other tips or other things that you did to build your world, like, please tell us, because I mean, I'd love to know.
Yeah, like the question for the audience. Two-parter, I guess. What is your favorite world building aspect of anything you've ever seen? Movies, TV shows, books, whatever it is. And what is the one thing that turned you off, actually?
Yes.
So you saw that it was like, ooh, you know what? You actually had me until this point.
Yes.
Now my panties are going back where they were, and I'm going home. You lost
so
me,
on
buddy.
that, yeah, maybe we'll do character building next, something to maybe solidify this a little bit more, but peace out.
Yeah, this has been Authors
Anonymous
with Carolyn Rosa Potts
and AR Mirabal.
Catch us next Tuesday when we come back with you with another episode, Character Development.